Good evening. So again we start Tess of the D'Urbervilles, and we are in the middle of chapter 25. And in chapter 25, we learned that Angel Claire has gone home. That's after declaring his love for Tess. So the next morning, he was not found in the dairy farm, and the milkmaids learned that he has gone to see his family members. So we find in chapter 25 his reunion with family members. So his family was surprised by his sudden arrival. And after breakfast, he walked with his two brothers. His two brothers too happened to be at home at that time. So in this section we find how his brothers are described. His two brothers, non-evangelical, well-educated, hallmarked young men, correct to their remotest fiber. And also we find that they are unimpeachable models. And then they are turned out yearly by the lathe of systematic tuition. And that is how they are molded. And then they are accurate in everything and blamed as models of systematic education. They were both somewhat short-sighted, poor vision, and of course we can apply that to their short-sightedness in other matters as well. And poor moral vision. And when it was the custom to wear single eyeglass and string, they wore single eyeglass and string. When it was a custom to wear double glass, they wore double glass. When it was a custom to wear spectacles, they wore spectacles straight away. All without reference to the particular variety of defect in their own vision. So this is actually a very good comment on his brothers. And then his brothers appear to be blind followers of trends at that time, following tradition, fashion, without paying much attention to their uh, kind of defect. So you can write there, his brothers are conventional ones and they blindly follow traditions and a typical product of education system at that time. And also once again we find something more about that. When Wordsworth was enthroned, they carried pocket copies. When Shelley was belittled, they allowed him to grow dusty on their shelves. So they follow the tradition at that time. Right. So something similar is there. So they appear to be ones with poor judgment, not having their own individual opinion on something, but they blindly adhere to customs or traditions during that time. And in the next paragraph, we find what they noticed about the visitor, their younger brother Angel. And they notice certain things in his behavior. And of course, we can see that they are quite critical. They critically, harshly judge their younger brother. Social ineptness, try to notice Angel's growing social ineptness. He noticed their growing mental limitations, and they are prone to find weaknesses of each other's. And Felix, eldest brother, seemed to him all church, Cuthbert, all college. His diocesan synod and visitations were the mainsprings of the world to the one, Cambridge to the other. Each brother candidly recognized that there were a few unimportant score of millions of outsiders in civilized society. Persons who were neither university men nor churchmen, but they were to be tolerated rather than reckoned with and respected. Right. So he was conscious of the limitations of his brothers. One is old church, all about religion, full of religious ideas, and the other one is all college, right, about education, that he gave priority to educational matters. But anyway, there are some merits of these sons. They are dutiful, attentive sons, regular in their visits to their parents. That was something expected of them, and they fulfill their duty by their parents, regularly visit their parents, and dutiful and attentive. And also we find that sons' religious ideas somewhat differ from father's conventional religious ideologies. So the sons are somewhat flexible because they are somewhat prone to modern versions of religion, right? So we find that too is mentioned here. And Cuthbert, the more liberal minded, though with greater subtlety, he had not so much heart, right? So heart means sensibilities, feelings, emotions, but anyway more liberal minded. So they are somewhat or slightly different from their father in their religious views. The father is from the old school, right? He is a conventionalist when it comes to religion. As they walked along the hillside, Angel's former feeling revived in him that whatever their advantages by comparison with himself, neither so set forth life as it really was lived. Perhaps as with many men, the opportunities of observation were not so good, as a opportunities of expression. Right. Okay. So we find more about these two brothers and their shortcomings. Neither saw the difference between local truth and universal truth, that what the inner world said in their clerical and academical hearing is quite a different thing from what the outer world was thinking. Right. So their shortcomings are revealed in this section and how they differ from angel Claire. And move on to the next paragraph. I suppose it is farming or nothing for you now, my dear fellow. So one can't miss their condescending attitude towards their own brother. And we know Angel Claire selected a different path, not the path taken by others in the family, and he decided to be a farmer. So Felix was saying, among other things, to his youngest brother, and then he was looking through his spectacles at the distant field with sad austerity. Right, farming or nothing for you. So you can write there condescending attitude towards Angel. Felix condescending attitude towards Angel. Because now actually there's a gap between brothers, elder brothers and the younger brother. Because younger brother has selected a certain profession that is not to their approval. And with the selection of that profession, he will be considered socially lower to them. Uh, we must make the best of it. What I do entreat you to endeavor to keep as much as possible in touch with moral ideals. Farming, of course, means roughing it externally, but high thinking may go with plain living nevertheless. Right. So, patronizing attitude. He sounds as if he is superior. He knows more. He advises Angel. And then they appear to be thinking very highly of themselves. And they consider Angel as someone who is inferior. Farming means roughing it externally. Right? You can write their patronizing attitude towards Angel. Right. So their superior mentality is manifested. Of course, it may say danger. Was it not true 1900 years ago? If I may trespass upon your domain a little, why should you think, Felix, that I'm likely to drop my high thinking and my moral ideals? And actually, this is like foreshadowing, because later in the novel we will find that he has not actually dropped his high thinking and his moral ideals. Right? Can you mark this and write foreshadowing? Well, I fancied from the tone of your letters and our conversation. It may be fancy only that you were somehow losing intellectual grasp. Hasn't it struck you, cute bird? So, Angel wanted to stop this unpleasant conversation. We are very good friends, you know, each of us treading our allotted circles. Right? That is, you in your own world, own circle, and I'm in my world. And our worlds are different. But if it comes to intellectual grasp, I think you, as a contented dogmatist, had better leave mine alone and inquire what has become of yours. Right. So we can see that he has become impatient now because he is conscious of the treatment of his brothers towards him due to the profession he has selected as his future path. Right. After that, we find they are returning, and then they came down the hill to dinner, and there was no fixed time for it, and it was fixed at any time at which their fathers and mothers' morning work in the parish usually concluded. So we can see that they have given priority to their parish work, religious work, and they appear to be quite selfless, thinking about others first, and after that, if they have time, they will look at themselves. Right. So we find unselfish Mr. and Mrs. Clare. Right. Though the three sons are sufficiently in unison on this matter to wish that their parents would conform a little to modern notions. Right. So they are devoted uh, to serve others in their parish. Not only the father but mother as well. So they are hungry. So their walk had made them hungry, but they had to wait for their parents because now Angel has developed different food habits because now he is an outdoor person, right? And he is used to take a very sumptuous meal after outdoor activities, and they were almost tired of waiting for their parents, and finally they came. The self-denying pair, this is a reference to the parents. So we found earlier unselfish, and also yeah, they are committed to parish work. Okay, self-denying pair, and they had been doing something, and they were trying to make some sick parishioners eat or take some food, coaxing the appetites of some of their sick parishioners. And in doing that, their own appetites being quite forgotten. and they were not hungry. They did not feel hungry because they were catering to the hunger of some sick people in their parish. And after that, the family sat down to dinner. An angel, that was a very frugal meal, not a rich meal. An angel was looking round for Mrs. Crick's black puddings. And he knew that, that was grilled very nicely with the flavors of some herbs, rare herbs. And he appreciated that quite highly, and he wanted his family to taste it. That is a special gift by Mrs. Crick. And then mother observed that he was looking round. So she guessed that he was looking round for the black puddings. And then it was revealed that uh, it was given to the children of the man who can earn nothing just now, right, because of his attacks of delirium tremens. He agreed that it would be a great pleasure to them, so we did. So they were putting others' welfare before them, and it was gifted to poor children, right? Poor children, and these children didn't have a very good diet because their father could not earn anything. He is sick, so they decided to give that special food to these children. And then, of course, Angel couldn't say anything, so agreed cheerfully, of course. And then he looked round for maid, and that is a second gift by Mrs. Crick. And then his mother continued, and this is the fate of the second person. And she decided that that was extremely alcoholic, and it's a kind of a honey wine. And then she decided that that is unfit for use as a beverage, but anyway, that could be used as a medicine. It's valuable as rum or brandy in an emergency. So I have put it in my medicine closet. So thinking that that is extremely alcoholic to be used daily, she has put that in her medicine closet to be used as a medicine in certain cases. And then father too added, we never drink spirits, that is to alcoholic drinks, at this table on principle. Right. So this is the fate of the second gift. An angel asked, what shall I tell the dairyman's wife? The truth, of course, said his father. And we know truth is quite unpleasant. How can he say that the gifts were not used by them but given away to somebody else? But father asked him to reveal the truth, not to tell lies. I rather wanted to say we enjoyed the meat and the black puddings very much. And this is not the meadow, but a kind of honey wine. She's a kind, jolly sort of body, and is sure to ask me directly I return. You cannot if we did not, Mr. Clare answered lucidly. Ah, no, though the maid was a drop of pretty tipple. In a colloquial expression, something he has picked from those ordinary villagers. And this is not refined language. So look at the way his brothers reacted to that. Oh, what? His brothers, right? Came out his brothers. Oh, it's an expression they use down at Talbot Oils. Replied Angel, blushing. He felt that his parents are right in their practice, if wrong in their want of sentiment, and said no more. Okay, so once again we see how condescending they are. At once they reacted to that colloquial expression because that is not considered good language, refined language, not educated. And then he blushed because he realized that he said something that should not have been said. All right, this is the end of chapter 25. Right, then shall we move on to chapter 26? And here we find how they prayed together. So many Victorian families at that time prayed together. Not all Victorians, but many, or some families. And we know that this is a conventional family, and then they are religious people. So therefore, it was a practice of the family that they pray together. Right, so that is mentioned there in the first paragraph. When the service was over, they went out of the room with their mother, and Mr. Clare and himself were left alone. So brothers and mother left the room after praying, but Angel remained with his father. And next we find how he started to discuss his future plans with his father. The young man first discussed with the elder. That means young man is Angel, elder is his father. His plans for the attainment of his position as a farmer on an extensive scale. And then perhaps in England or perhaps somewhere else in one of the colonies. So that was a time lot of people migrated to different colonies in search of their fortune. And then father told him something he did not know, as he had not been put to the expense of sending Angel up to Cambridge. He had felt it his duty. So his father is a duty conscious person. And we know he felt very bad about not sending his youngest son to Cambridge and favoring his elder sons. So he thought of doing something for that. So he felt it his duty to set by a sum of money every year towards a purchase or lease of land for him someday, that he might not feel himself unduly slighted. Right. So their father shows some consideration because he wanted to appear very fair by all his sons. So you can write here, Angel discusses his future plans with his father, and then father's consideration. As far as worldly wealth goes, continued his father, you will no doubt stand far superior to your brothers in a few years. That is, in a few years, you will be a richer person than your brothers. Right? So, not in a spiritual wealth, but his brothers will be spiritually superior. At the same time, he suggested. So, you can underline this. Considerateness on old. Mr. Clare's part. Led Angel onward to the other and dearer subject. So, this consideration displayed by his father made him broach on another subject that is closer to his heart. And first he mentioned about his age, 6 and 20, 26, ripe young age. And also he pointed out that when he should start in the farming business, he would require eyes in the back of his head to see to all matters. Someone would be necessary to superintend the domestic labors of his establishment whilst he was afield. So he pointed out the necessity of having a companion. Then asked, would it not be well therefore for him to marry? His father seemed to think the idea not unreasonable. Then Angel put the question, what kind of wife do you think would be best for me as a thrifty, hard-working farmer? So in future, he won't be a priest, but he would be a farmer, hard-working one and thrifty also. So he can't maintain the social standards he maintains now. So he has to be very thrifty, save, and he has to work hard for a living. So his question is, what kind of wife would be suited to him? And this is his father's opinion about a fitting wife for Angel Clare, a future farmer. A truly Christian woman who will be a help and a comfort to you in your goings out and your comings in. That is ups and downs in your life. Beyond that, it really matters a little. Such an one can be found indeed. My earnest minded friend and neighbor, Dr. Chan, he started to mention a certain lady, his friend's daughter. And when we look at this, we can clearly see that his father is not a practical sort of a person. And he does not have the practical knowledge of his future situation and the kind of woman he actually needs. Right? So he decided a truly Christian woman because he is a religious person. And then who will be a moral support, not physically supporting a husband. And then, Angel pointed out the practical side of this. But ought she not primarily to be able to milk cows, churn good butter, make immense cheeses, know how to sit hens and turkeys and rear chickens, to direct a field of laborers in an emergency, and estimate the value of sheep and cows. Right. So he pointed out clearly that his future wife should be a person of this nature, a farmer's wife who knows about farming and dairy farming and of course in matters like managing the estate in the absence of a husband. As a farmer's wife, yes, certainly it would be desirable. And his father plainly had never thought of these points before. So he never thought of a practical aspect of that kind of life. I was going to add that for a pure and saintly woman, you will not find one more to your true advantage, and certainly not more to your mother's mind and my own than your friend Mercy, whom you used to show a certain interest in. You can underline Mercy Chant. It's true that my neighbor Chant's daughter had lately caught up the fashion of the younger clergy, right? So she too has taken up modern religious views and certain practices that is not to the approval of this conventional Mr. Clare. But anyway, he knows that she is a well brought up lady and from the same social class, right? And then he spoke about decorating the altar and then using it, uh, using a different name to refer to it. Okay, right. And then he plainly pointed out that Miss Chan would not be the right person, right wife for him because he will be a farmer in future. And of course, for a priest, she will make a fine companion because she knows about those things. But anyway, farmer's wife, according to him, should understand the duties of farm life as well as a farmer himself. And such a girl would suit me infinitely better, he pointed out. Right, so in that way, he dismisses Mercy Chan as a fitting wife for him. But anyway, father being not that practical, continued to argue in favor of Mercy Chan and then suggesting him to select a wife who has good religious background. Okay, uh, right. And then about this is about Tess. and he started to speak about his choice. She was a regular church goer of simple faith, honest hearted, receptive, intelligent, graceful to a degree, chaste as a vesper, and in personal appearance exceptionally beautiful. So he started to speak about the girl he has selected, right? And first he started to speak about going to church regularly, a person with simple faith, honest, intelligent, graceful, and then chaste and beautiful also. And then mother was eavesdropping. Is she of a family such as you would care to marry into? A lady, in short. Can you mark this question of mother? So even though they are so religious minded people, they are somewhat class conscious. And we know that they are completely committed to parish work. They are selfless people, very kind hearted. But anyway, they are not without snobbery, right? They are class conscious. They did not want their son to select someone who's socially superior, sorry, socially inferior, right? So mother and father wanted him to select someone from the same social class, if not superior. Okay. So Angel actually has to defend his sweetheart, and then he agreed that, and she cannot be called a lady. What in common parlance is called a lady, not what in common parlance is called a lady. She's a cottager's daughter, as I'm proud to say, but she is a lady, nevertheless, in feeling and nature. So, those are his unconventional ideas. Right? Cottager's daughter, a country girl, a peasant's daughter. But anyway, he considers she as a lady in feeling and nature. But anyway, mothers continue to speak about Mercy Chan's merits, being of a very good family, right? So they are conscious of the class, social class, not that happy about Angel selecting Cottager's daughter as his future wife. So Angel had to argue with his mother. What's the advantage of that mother? How is family to avail the wife? Avail means help. The wife of a man who has to rough it as I have and shall have to do. Right, you can mark this. How is family to avail the wife of a man who has rough it as I have and shall have to do? Mercy is accomplished. That is accomplished as a lady, but accomplished as a farmer's wife. And she doesn't know these things like how to sit the hens, and about poultry farming and other things, but accomplished in other things like social behavior and proper social behavior like propriety and decorum, and then educated, had religious education too. And mother further says that these accomplishments have their charm. So this is his counter argument. As to external accomplishments, what will be the use of them in the life I am going to lead? So his parents are not really practical people, but they hang on to their own opinion. Mother hangs on to her opinion because usually we know that parents want their children to do better, select a better partner from the same social class or from a better social class. uh, we can see Angel is quite honest, and he did not lie about education. While as to her reading, I can take that in hand. And then he confessed that he wanted to teach her. And also, he said that she is brimful of poetry, actualized poetry, if I may use the expression. She lives what paper poets only write. You can mark this. And she is an unimpeachable Christian, I'm sure. Perhaps of the very tribe, genus, and species you desire to propagate. Okay, right? And to him, she is very poetic, and she is like a living poem. She lives what paper poets only write. Okay. Oh, angel, you're mocking. Mother, I beg pardon. But as she really does attend church almost every Sunday morning and is a good Christian girl. Can you mark this? So he wanted to convince his mother that at least this alone is enough to accept her as their future daughter-in-law, a regular church goer and a good Christian girl. I'm sure you will tolerate any social shortcomings for the sake of that quality. So he addressed to her religious sentiments. Feel that I may do worse than choose her. Right, you can mark this. Okay. In their sad doubts as to whether their son had himself any right whatever to the title he claimed for the unknown young woman, Mr. and Mrs. Clare, you can mark this. Mr. and Mrs. Clare began to feel it as an advantage not to be overlooked that she at least was sound in her views. Right? So mark this as well. They said finally that it was better not to act in a hurry. but that they would not object to see her. So finally, since they could not change his mind about his choice, they advise him not to do something in a hurry. So, but that he has to wait a little bit and know the girl first, and after that he can enter into the marriage. And also they said that they would not object to see her. Okay. After that, he did not want to say more about the girl he has selected because he knew his parents. He felt that single minded and self sacrificing as his parents were. Can you underline this? There existed certain latent prejudices of theirs as middle class people, underline which it would require some tact to overcome. So that is their middle class mentality. Right, so he knew it well. So he tactfully decided to let it pass for the time being. And then later, he has decided to take it up again. Okay. And in this section, we find uh, Angel's thoughts about Tess. Right, so he thinks that Tess would be the suitable partner for him. Okay, right. I'm not going to go through each and every line, but the idea is that Angel thinks that Tess would be the suitable partner. Okay, then shall we move on to the next section, next paragraph? So it was a morning of his departure. So his mission is somewhat completed. He informed his parents about his choice, selecting that dairy maid as his future wife, even though he did not provide much details about the person he selected. But then he allowed them to understand that he had selected a cottager's daughter, not one from his own social class. Okay. So after that, he decided to leave. And then at that time, his brothers had already left the vicarage to proceed on a walking tour in the north. When one was to return to his college and other to his curacy, to his parish. And it was said earlier, one is old college and the other one is old church. Okay. And he too might have accompanied them, but he preferred to rejoin his sweetheart at Talbot's. And also he felt that he would be an awkward member of the party. Okay, right. So he felt that he's a square peg in a round hole, a misfit, right? That now he does not fit the company of his brothers. He felt it deeply. He did not want to mention Tess to his brothers because he knew that they are quite condescending towards those who are socially inferior. Next, we find some details about his departure, and father accompanied him a little way along the road, and he started to speak about his parish duties. Uh, right. Then shall we move from here? Punish us, said Mr. Clare. A genial scorn. Punish us is harmful, and he started to recount experiences which would show the absurdity of that idea. He told of wondrous conversions of evil livers of which he had been the instrument, not only amongst the poor, but amongst the rich and well to do. And he also candidly, that is honestly, admitted many failures. You mark this section. Right there, his father started to narrate his experiences as a clergyman, and how he converted some people, some bad people, and then there were some bad people not only among the poor people but among the rich people, and from upper social class, and also his failures as well. He talked about his failures too, and admitted many failures. As an instance of the latter means one of his failures, that he failed to convert a certain evil person. He mentioned the case of a young upstart squire named D'Urberville. So, a squire is a rural landowner living some 40 miles off in the neighborhood of Tantridge. Right, you can mark this, underline. So, he had tried to convert D'Urberville, Alec D'Urberville. Right, we know that he is a person there, right, of that name, a square, and in the neighborhood of Tentridge. And then his son heard about ancient D'Urbervilles. Not one of the ancient D'Urbervilles of Kingswear and other places. Asked his son, that curiously historic worn out family with its ghostly legend of the poach and foe. So this is something known to people in the area, that D'Urberville legend. Right, so ghostly legend of, you can underline ghostly legend of the coach and four. So this will be mentioned later in the novel too. Oh no, the original D'Urbervilles decayed and disappeared 60 or 80 years ago. At least I believe so. It seems to be a new family which had taken the name. Right. And also, father added, it is odd to hear you express interest in old families. I thought you set less store by them even than I. That I know that you don't care for them. Right. And of course, he pointed out that he is tenderly attached to them. And then, he does not admire them because they are old and noble families, right? And he says that, he has a soft corner for them also. So this is something, this distinction is something not really understood by his father. So he continued with the story he was about to narrate, which was that after the death of the senior so-called D'Urberville, the young man developed the most culpable passions. Culpable passions, that is wrong passions. He had a blind mother whose condition should have made him know better, and a knowledge of his career, his bad reputation, reached the ears of Mr. Clare. He came to know about it, he heard about it. And then he was once in that part of the country. And he was preaching missionary sermons. And he decided to speak to the delinquent on his spiritual state. Right? He decided to improve him spiritually, give him spiritual advice. Though he was a stranger occupying another's pulpit, he had felt this to be his duty. Right, so he was not in his own parish, somebody else's parish. But still, he decided that that was his duty as a priest. Right, so this young man resented his advice. And in the war of words which followed when they met, he did not scruple publicly to insult Mr. Clare. You can underline, he did not scruple publicly to insult Mr. Clare. Underline, without respect for his grey hairs. Right, so they argued and then even insulted this old priest. And then his son flushed with distress. Dear father, I wish you would not expose yourself to such gratuitous pain from scoundrels. Father, you are lowering your position. You don't do it. Don't meddle with these people. Incorrigible ones, you can't correct them. Then he repeated that word, pain, and said that only pain was pain on his account, poor foolish young man. So he's not angry with this foolish young man because he wanted to change him. Do you suppose his incense words could give me any pain, or even his blows? Right. So he quoted from a religious text, and then since he mentioned blows, Angel was shocked. Not blows, father. He did not proceed to blows. No, he did not. Though I have borne blows from men in a mad state of intoxication. Right? So some people actually did not care for priests. And when he tried to preach them, some under the influence of liquor, even hit him, borne blows from men who are drunk a dozen times. What then? Not once but twice, but dozen times. I have saved them. What then? I have saved them from the guilt of murdering their own flesh and blood thereby. And they have lived to thank me and praise God. May this young man do the same, said Angel fervently. But I fear otherwise from what you say. Okay. Can you underline they have lived to thank me. Those who earlier attacked Mr. Clare, later they thanked him for saving them from damnation. Also underline this, may this young man do the same. You can write there foreshadowing. Foreshadowing. So at a later point in the novel, we find Alec d'Urberville recalling the words of Mr. Clare, old Mr. Clare, and a letter sent, and he carried a letter sent by old Mr. Clare. Okay, right. We find it later in the novel. And I continue to pray for him. Though on this side of the grave we shall probably never meet again, but after all, one of those poor words of mine may spring up in his heart as a good seed someday. Mark these two lines. And again, you can write foreshadowing. Foreshadowing. So he knew that his father was sanguine, that is, optimistic as a child. Anyway, younger means angel could not accept his parents' narrow dogma. He revered his practice and recognized a hero under the higher test. Okay, right. Perhaps he revered his father's practice even more now than ever, seeing that in the question of making Tessie his wife, his father had not once thought of inquiring whether she were well provided or penniless. Okay, can you mark this? So they are not mercenary people, even though they are somewhat class conscious. His father had not once thought of inquiring whether she were well provided or penniless. Okay. And then, so Angel felt that he was nearer to his father on the human side than was either of his brethren. That means his brothers. So then, shall we move on to chapter 27? So we find at first the details about his ride. So he seems to be enjoying his ride back to the farm. Perhaps, he's in a very good mood. So when he returned to the dairy, not a human being was out of doors at this time. So next we find their habit. So the inmates of the farm usually enjoy their afternoon nap at this time because they keep to very early hours in summer. So therefore, that afternoon nap is usually taken by the inmates of the dairy farm since they always get up very early, too early. So next we find how he went through the silent house and males and females all are asleep and some men are snoring even. So at that time, the clock struck 3 and then Tess came down. So she was up from her nap, afternoon nap, and she didn't see Angel there. She had not heard him enter and hardly realized his presence there. So she was actually a picture of temptation, yawning, red interior of her mouth as if it had been a snake's, right? So he was attracted to her beauty now and softness, smoothness he noticed in her. And then, so he could not control himself and then came out with uh, endearing term, dear darling Tessie. Don't for heaven's sake Mr. me anymore. Don't call me Mr. I have hastened back so soon because of you. And for the first time, uh, he was openly revealing his love for Tess with such an endearing term, even though he professed his love for her earlier. Okay, and there we find how she willingly bore his embrace, and while she regarded him as Eve at a second waking might have regarded Adam. And this too is a reference to temptation. And Eve at a second waking, and biblical allusion. And Eve was awakened for the second time by Satan. right? So that indicates temptation. Then, and she wanted to move away from his embrace, and then gave the excuse of having to go to do skimming. And there is no like other helpers are not around, it seems, and there is only one helper, old Deborah, and Mr. and Mrs. Crick are not at home, and Retty too is not well. Others are gone out and won't be home till milking. So others are not around, it seems. And then Deborah came to help, and then Mr. Clare asked her to extend her sleep. That I'm here to help Tess with skimming, so you needn't come down till milking time. So next we find how these two lovers were engaged in skimming together. Right, so it was described by the writer as an uh, occasion where that milk was perhaps not thoroughly skimmed because they were not really attentive to it. Their minds were on something else. And Tess was dreamy, and then it's like, she was half awake, and then, she's nervous as well because her lover is by her side. Uh, right, and from time to time, he was there embracing her. Right. So there we find how he proposes to Tess in the proper way. I shall soon want to marry, and being a farmer, you see, I shall require for my wife a woman who knows all about the management of farms. Will you be that woman, Tessie? You can write there. He proposes to Tess. He proposes to Tess. So there he is presented in contrast to Alec d'Urberville, and Alec never mentioned anything about marriage. But Angel, even before he started a serious relationship, he proposed to Tess. And then this is a very difficult question to answer. Oh, Mr. Clare, I cannot be your wife. I cannot be. Right. Of course, as readers, we know why she rejected it. I cannot be your wife. I cannot be. But Angel doesn't know it. Right? And the sound of her own decision seemed to break Tessa's very heart, and she bowed her face in her grief. And of course, she is extremely happy with Angel, but she knows that she cannot give consent to this because of what happened to her. She is not a pure woman. And then, she doesn't have the nerve to confess that to him. But Tess, and he is amazed. Do you say no? Surely you love me. And from the way she behaved, he understood that she loves him So he questions, surely you love me? Oh, yes, I would rather be yours than anybody's in the world, returned the sweet and honest voice of the distressed girl. But I cannot marry you. And then she can't give the reason, right? And then he gently presses. Then he asks, you are engaged to marry someone else? No. Then why do you refuse me? I don't want to marry. I have not thought of doing it. I only want to love you. And then he pressed again. Then she was driven to subterfuge, to evasion, to evade. So she was stammering because she was not speaking the truth. And she thought that she should speak something about his social position. Your father is a parson, and your mother wouldn't like you to marry such as me. She will want you to marry a lady. Right? Can you write there? Tess speaks about angel social status. So she implies that they are socially not compatible, and parents would not like this. And then he revealed that he had spoken to both of them. That is partly why I went home. Then she doesn't have any other excuse. I feel I cannot, never, never, she echoed. And then he thought that it may be too sudden. Is it too sudden to be asked thus, my pretty? Yes, I did not expect it. If you will let it pass, please, Tessie, I will give you time. And in his innocence, he thought that he was too soon to propose to her, and then he should give her some time to get used to that idea. And then he promised not to mention it again for a while. And after that, she continued skimming, right? But found that she was nervous and then not in a good mind to do it well, right? And she admitted that she couldn't do it. I can't skim, I can't. And then Clea understood that she may have been agitated in the mind and started to speak in a more general way. And then he said that his parents were most simple mannered people alive, and then unambitious. That is, they don't want to add to the family fortune, and they don't think about the wealth of the bride. They are two of the few remaining evangelical school. Tessie, are you an evangelical? I don't know. You go to church very regularly, and our parson here is not very high, they tell me. And poetess cannot understand those fine differences in various religious sects, right? So religious ideas are quite limited. There's ideas of the views of the parish clergyman whom she heard every week seemed to be rather more vague than Claire's, who had never heard him at all. I wish I could fix my mind on what I hear there more firmly than I do. It is often a great sorrow to me. Then she confessed that she was not really attentive to what the priest, the clergyman preaches. It's often a great sorrow to me. And then she spoke in a very innocent manner. An angel was quite sure that his father could not object to her on religious grounds. So she doesn't have very strict or firm religious ideas. She didn't have those firm religious opinions fixed in her mind. And she's just a rural girl with a very simple mind. So she did not know whether her principles were high, low, broad, reference to various religious ideas, high church, low church, or broad. Okay. So Angel knew that that is because of the religious knowledge she received as a child. And after that, he started to speak further about the incidents of his visit, father's mode of life, his zeal for his principles. And after that, she became calmer, right? And could skim better. And right. And after that, she observed that I fancied you looked a little downcast when you came in. She ventured to observe, anxious to keep away from the subject of herself. She wanted to change the subject. She did not want him to speak about them, right, their future marriage, right? So she decided to speak of something else. His changed mood when he came. Right, then he started to speak about what he heard from his father about his duties, religious duties. Okay, right, then he started to speak about father's experiences, right, father's difficulties, troubles, and how he had to deal with difficult people. Okay, we'll move on. Right. He has been telling me of a very unpleasant scene. So you can mark this place in which he took part quite recently. He went as a deputy of some missionary society to preach in the neighborhood of Tantridge, a place 40 miles from here. And then he mentioned about Lax young cynic, a reference to Alec, though the name is not mentioned, son of some landowner up that way, who has a mother afflicted with blindness. Then Tess can understand who's been referred to. My father addressed himself to the gentleman point blank, and there was quite a disturbance. It was very foolish of my father, I must say, to intrude his conversation upon a stranger when the probabilities were so obvious that it would be useless. But whatever he thinks to be his duty, that he will do in season or out of season. And of course, he makes many enemies. Thus, unknowingly, he recounted his father's experience with Alec d'Urberville, though the name is not mentioned. And next we find the impact of that story upon Tess. Tess's look had grown hard and worn, and then wry mouth tragical. Claire's revived thoughts of his father prevented his noticing her particularly. Right, and of course he was discussing about his father's difficulties, and he didn't notice her change. How her look had grown hard and worn. Right. And then after that, Deborah came to help them. As Tess withdrew to go afield to the cows, he said to her softly, and my question, Tessie. Oh no. Now she replies with determination and with very serious hopelessness, as one who had heard anew the turmoil of her own past in the allusion to Alec d'Urberville. You can mark this. It can't be. Now this is a firm no, can't be. And after that, right, that is a positive no, can't be. And after that, she went out towards a mead and joined other milkmaids, right? Okay. It seemed natural enough to him now that Tess was again in sight to choose a mate from unconstrained nature and not from the abodes of art, right? So that's the end of chapter 27, right? So we'll stop today's session now, and then next day or in the next lesson we will be looking at chapter 28 and 29. Okay, right.